Hello, everyone. Welcome to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. I'm Nipasa Pradhan, your host for today, and I'm very happy to have you join us, for this very amazing discussion that's lined up for you. So, before we start off, I have this important disclaimer, and that is by watching our videos, you agree and understand that the information provided by our experts and attorneys, including comments and replies from users, is not legal advice. Use of information is at your own risk. So, once again, friends, thank you so much for joining us on Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. And our topic for this session is going to be all about family visas, how Trump 2.0 could change the future of family immigration. As we look ahead for potential shifts in immigration policies, it's essential to understand the stakes, challenges, and what might be on the horizon or on our plate for families hoping to reunite in the United States. So, to help us unpack this complex and dynamic topic, we have a very special guest who's going to join us for the first time here on Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. Please help me welcome him, attorney John Q. Khosravi. And John is not only the managing attorney at the JQK law firm specializing in family, business, and talent based immigration, but also an adjunct professor of immigration law at Pepperdine Law School. So, as a first generation American with immigrant parents, John brings a unique and deeply personal perspective to his work, and his expertise is unmatched. And it's going to be great to have him join us today in our show. So, without further ado, please help me welcome John Q. Khosravi. Hi, John. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Nipasa. Thank you so much for having me in the wonderful intro.
Thank you so much. But we'd love to get to know you better. So, anything else you want to tell us about yourself would be great.
Sure. I just happened to become an immigration attorney 15 years ago because it's just the first job I got. A lot of American lawyers don't go into immigration directly unless they're working with asylum applicants, but they fall into it and you kind of fall in love with it. The people you work with always have very interesting backgrounds. It's like reading the best biographies every day in a meeting. Everyone comes and has a exciting life, and it's a blessing to be able to do this work and especially with the technology that we have nowadays to reach out all across the world and talk to people. So I really enjoy it. I'm really happy I got this job, and it opens me to speak with people like yourself.
Absolutely amazing to have you. And you're a professor, you say. So, how long have you been teaching immigration?
So I started teaching immigration law first at Loyola Law School, then at Pepperdine there in Southern California. I don't know, it was like 7 or 8 years ago. And then when COVID happened, they had us all do our teaching through video. So I stopped that because the fun of meeting students in person was gone. But instead, I
Yeah.
started a different program. Instead of going for law students, I started a program called the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox, where I train other immigration lawyers, either new to the field or who wanted to learn more about certain aspects of immigration law. So now I have a program called the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox. This is intended for other professionals, other immigration lawyers. And so I just direct professional business to business training and business lawyer training more than students nowadays.
Wow, that's amazing. That's
Thank
amazing.
you.
So good to have you. And I think, yes, what can we expect in our discussion today on this topic, all about family visas, how Trump 2.0 could change the future of family immigration?
Well, when I first started doing immigration laws, it was really happy because always helping people and we figure out the way to get them going. Since the Trump administration began last time and this time, I kind of feel like I'm a doctor giving people bad news because it's just going to be depressing to a large extent. But it's better to know what you're dealing with. Go to the doctor early to catch any issues is the main thing. The biggest problem is going to be delays, delays, delays. There's very few things we can say for certain because we don't know exactly which direction to go. The government is going to be sued and pushed back on certain things. And Elon Musk is helping the government. Who knows if he has a more pro-immigrant idea, and especially from large parts of the country, including India, a lot of his skilled workers coming. It might be different, but delays are going to be there for sure. There's a numerous ways they're going to do that, and it's already evident it's going to happen. So that's like the thing to expect. And by knowing it, at least you can plan out your life properly. So if you don't quit your job or sell your property immediately, you know that there's going to be delays. So don't rush into things in this process.
Right, right. And we are going to unfold more under this topic for sure. And before we move ahead to our questions, I have this important thing to tell you. Folks out there, you can join us also on call. The phone number is displayed on the screen. The number is 425-436-6335, and they'll ask for an access code. And that's when you dial in 988-888 and just say hello. After that, we'll be able to hear you. So, yes, I'm excited. I hope you can join us. And otherwise, you can also comment wherever you're watching us. We are streaming live right now on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and also on X. So please feel free to drop your questions in the comments and we will address them today in our webinar. So, yes, John, coming back to our discussion, recently Tom Hooman suggested that, he said that he would deport families together as a way to enforce stricter immigration policies. So, John, how do you interpret this statement from a legal and practical perspective?
Well, I didn't hear the beginning of the statement. Who was it that made that statement?
Tom Hooman,
Tom
the
what? Tom.
Baudazar.
Oh, well, yeah, that guy. So, I mean, a lot of his stuff is going on with what's going on at the border, the southern border of the United States, where millions of people have been coming the last couple of years, and essentially, they haven't been managing and organized really well. It's become very chaotic, and unfortunately, it's led to a lot of people, abuse happening, cartels running wild. So that's going to be a major issue on trying to figure out how to stop that. And the people who have already here, or at least create a manageable system, the people who are here, how to connect with families, do stuff. It looks like they'd be very harsh on it, but there's one aspect of U.S. immigration laws. Most people have to have a court hearing. And there's not enough judges to even handle the amount of court hearings. And it's very difficult to hire judges, train them, all this kind of stuff. So there's already delays in being, again, if they want to kick anybody out, they got to go to court first. And the courts are backed up like crazy, like 3 million cases right now backed up. If someone has an immigration court hearing today, or they get caught or something like that, they might say, come back in 7 or 8 years and we'll see your hearing. So if they get all these troops and amount of people try to, take people in the U.S. to kick him out, essentially, it's going to take 15 years for that to happen. So inevitably, a lot of this rhetoric has to be very harsh as a bargaining tactic, which seems like something Trump does, because to scare people. Because I've had people call and tell me they're just going to leave themselves because they're afraid. It has a goal in it. Practically speaking, because of the way the system is designed, they can't really do much because everything is frozen stiff. It's just the system is going to break, and there's nothing you could do about it. But they could prevent people from coming in, adding to it, which is a lot is at the border, and then again slowing things down in the legal immigration end, and changing things up there, which we're going to get into. But I think a lot of the rhetoric is to scare people to kind of self-remove themselves, and to kind of set the tone so people are afraid, and that gives them more leeway in negotiations with Congress, and new immigration programs. I think that's a lot of what's happening.
Right, right. Well, thank you so much, John, for giving us your perspective on this.
Well,
And now let's move on to our set of questions. And I have this first one. So, how could a potential Trump 2.0 administration impact the family-based immigration system in the U.S.?
sure. So there's the family-based immigration programs that we have in America are several types. So there's, if you're a U.S. citizen, you're applying for a spouse, a parent or minor child. Those are called immediate relatives. Um, if the child's in the United, or the family members in the United States, the changes aren't going to be that different, other than some delays and forcing interviews for people to go to interviews. Where in the last 4 years, they would just approve the case based on paperwork back and forth. If they're outside the United States, and this goes to all family cases, those are probably going to see additional delays in processing for background checks. Last time around, we had a lot of consular officers, people who work at the embassy, who were against President Trump, leave. So all of a sudden, they were understaffed. There's less funding going towards that, so they had less money to even hire people and staff. So you're going to see a massive slowdown. If you're overseas, this already takes a while. It's going to be even longer. Now, when it comes to other categories like brothers and sisters of U.S. citizens, adult children of U.S. citizens or green card holders, those are things that have been discussed to be on the chopping block, to get rid of them for many years for people that are against as wide of a family-based immigration system that we have. Those are part of the statutes. Those are the laws in the United States. So the president can't come directly and say, we're just going to cut this out. But again, that, as I was talking about the rhetoric earlier, by having a position that's so strict, potentially they can negotiate these and get rid of them in the future. But right now, as it is you can't really change much other than just throwing wrenches in there and creating problems to slow it down, to just make
Mhm.
frustrating for everybody. So that's the thing they're going to do. And then there's this other family employment based stuff is if someone's in the United States, they got a green card through work. And while they're getting the green card, they go and get married back home. To bring that spouse here, that process is backed up because the bureaucracy, like a year or two, that's going to probably get backed up again. So it's like they're not going to stop that process. Someone's here, CEO of a tech company, they got a green card and they just went back home and got married. That the spouse could get a green card based on the employment, not even based on, it's not a direct family case. It's a family member of an employment-based person. That has slowed down with the forms and stuff that exist, and that's probably just going to get worse and worse the way things are going. Because in the last 10 years, it just even under Democratic administrations, they've been slow. So it doesn't look good to a large extent. And again, it's going to be delays more than anything.
Sounds frustrating already, and I can only
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah, we've
Do
had
you think they?
couples
Sorry.
engaged and they decide, and I tell them it's going to be how much time, they end up breaking up. They're like, I can't wait 2 years. And if you're from Iran or Pakistan, you might have to wait 4, 5, 6 years to get your case through. And so people are even getting divorced or even breaking up. It's very sad that these delays are just tearing apart families. People are not seeing their
So
children for 5 or 6 years because of it. It's terrible.
it's terrible, really. Well,
I'm sorry to
do
hear
you
that.
think that they're going to make it that frustrating that they would also give up on this situation? I mean, you've already mentioned, of course, the divorce and separations and everything.
Yeah, on the employment side, sometimes employers be like, I can't wait 4 years for a guy to come or a gal to come here and work. So if that's a problem, and for couples, they do because if they're planning on where to go, a lot of times they would say, I'm just going to go to Canada instead. But Canada is getting bad too. So people are kind of stuck. And when it comes to fiance visa holders, we got a question from Mango over there. Can you clarify follow-on benefits? You married a green card holder from India. What about K1? So we'll talk about the K1. The K1 fiance visa is if you met someone overseas, you're a U.S. citizen is the first requirement. You can't be a green card holder, be a citizen. And you met someone overseas in the last 2 years, physically met them. There are exceptions to that rule, but they're very hard. You could file for a
Mhm.
fiance visa for him. And that process is already delayed. It's not much faster. People think it's faster than the marriage case, but not really. And that part's going to be delayed. And again, it depends on what country you're from. Pakistan cases could take extra years, for example. Iran cases, if there's a travel ban, it's going to be horrendous. And so you're waiting for a fiance to come for 4 years. People fall apart. So that's a major issue to happen. Now, when it comes to follow on benefits or follow the join, as they technically call it, this is the one I was referencing earlier. If someone, a person got an employment based green card and their spouse and kids are overseas, follow to join is a benefit there. Those are already seeing massive delays, and they're just going to get more delayed. So I think I'm going to be repeating myself a lot here, but it's really important. Even in my consultations, I repeat myself a lot on this. Delay, delay, delay. You have to accept it mentally because it's so frustrating. I hear clients call me and they say, my friend got it done 3 months in 3 months. I'm like, maybe 5 years ago, or maybe they got lucky, but there's just delays. There's no way around it. So that's what we're seeing. And it's going to continue to get worse.
Thank you so much. Thank you, John, for the detailed explanation and for taking up Magu's question as well. Thank you, Magu, for participating on YouTube. You can keep commenting. Let's move on to our next question, John. So, this one is: what specific changes do you anticipate in the way family sponsored visas are processed under the Trump 2.0 agenda?
Oh, great. Thank you, Shachi, for the question. If you have more specifics of what kind of family case you have, it'd be great. But you can expect processing delays on the first part of the case where we prove your relationship is real, whether it's like a family
Mhm.
member or a marriage, being more strict on that and just delaying their review of it. And then secondly, if they're overseas, on the embassy, just having more and more delays just to schedule an interview for you. And those are just getting worse and worse. So for large parts of the world, unless you're from Europe or Japan or Australia, even Canada has delays. Canada takes a year to get an embassy interview for a marriage case. So it is a lot of times it's non what they used to call first world countries. They're hitting them as bad too. But just the delays are going to be so bad and them being picky about paperwork and just not paying attention to your paperwork and making mistakes, that stuff's going to get worse.
And well, Mangu says, thank you for the answer. By the way, you look like a Hollywood star and explain so well. That's so
Thank you
sweet of
so
you.
much. I get
There
that.
you go.
There's a Bollywood star that people always comment like, you look like this guy. I forgot his name. He has but everyone's like, you look like that guy from that actor from Bollywood. Yeah,
From Bollywood. Oh, wow.
I can't remember.
Amir
I
Khan.
mean,
Is it? I don't know.
somebody I can't
But
remember.
yes,
Every once in a while, I'll get that comment.
oh, great, great. So, folks out there, maybe you can tell us who does John look like in Bollywood? Would be great to know. But yes, thank you, John, for that explanation as well.
You're
And
welcome.
now going, let's take up this next one. How would a renewed focus on family immigration limits affect the wait times for applicants in the family preference categories?
Sure. The family preference categories is if a green card holder, I mean, so this could be citizens. So these are non-immediate. So there are the main categories, which are if you're a citizen, you're applying for a parent, spouse, or minor children. Those technically don't have additional delays. They're supposed to be fast, but they're still slow. The preference categories are preference because there's annual limitations on how many green cards could be issued in those categories. So I don't remember the exact numbers. Let's say if you're a U.S. citizen, you have a child that's over 21 and his unmarried child, there's only 40,000 of those green cards that you give out every year. And there's probably like 150,000 people asking for it. So that means it's going to be as soon as the 40,000 are done for the year, you have to wait till next October 1st to start again. And so there's backlog there. During it's just a mess. They'll intentionally find ways to not approve them, to say we just don't have the staffing for them, and just delay. And how they calculate the numbers of these visas being used is a system that they don't really let us know what's going on. So we really don't know how much the timelines are. For example, there's a preference category called F2A, spouse of a green card holder or minor child of a green card holder. Right now, for them to approve those green cards from beginning to end, it's taking 3 to 4 years. About a year ago, there was no extra delay. Then all of a sudden, one month, they announced there's a 3.5 year backlog in these cases. Like, what happened? 5 years, no backlog, then 3.5 years. And it was really bad because we didn't expect it. So we have green card holders here who had their wife and kid overseas, and they're like, well, wait 4 years. So, and the green card holder has to live in the United States and maintain their residence here. So they're not going to see their kid growing up overseas because they got to be in the US, work, and live their life here. They spend too much time outside. They could take away the green card if they want to bother them. So all of a sudden, families are separated, and you think they make an exception for kids and stuff like that. These are minor children, like babies, to at least their green card holders, legit everything, speed it up so that their family could be together, the kid could grow up with both their parents. But that's one of the difficulties we're seeing happening.
All right. Thank you so much, John, for that detailed explanation. And yes, we are going to take up questions from all you folks out there, from Ajay, from uh, Sachin as well, but a little later in the show. So please stay with us. All right. And also, you can call us on this number 425-436-6335. And when they ask for the access code, dial in 988-888 and just say hello. We'll be able to hear you. Thank you so much, John. And moving on, let's go on to our next question. And that is, what do you think would happen to the F2A category, spouses and children of green card holders under Trump 2.0 policy shift?
Yeah, so it's not clear particularly what happened this category. This one has gotten really backed up that I spoke about a second ago, and it's been
Mhm.
a big problem. This category, the delays are really being difficult. Now, during if the family member was in the United States during President Obama's time, he changed the system up so it's easier for them to stay here while the case is pending. So if people are here, for example, a green card holder marries their spouse, comes on a tourist visa and decides to stay in the United States, potentially they could stay here while the process is pending. At least they could be together. But because President Obama just put that in on his own without any congressional work, this isn't publicly talked about. I probably shouldn't say, but it's a thing that President Trump and his people could just take away too. Because it wasn't something by statute put in; it was just a presidential edict. This is how we're going to do it. So that could really shift. So for people that are in the United States doing it, that could be a problem. So because they'll lose the opportunity to stay here while the case is pending, being with their spouse and their kids together. And so that could be a shift. That's an easy one for them to get, and they might be looking to. But they might, what happened alternatively is all these groups would sue them on that, and it'll be stuck in the court for 2 or 3 years of fighting it. And then by that time, they'll either give up or new administration comes. So lawsuits are going to be a big thing that happened last time. People would sue, and the courts would stop everything and say, okay, don't change anything yet till we go to Supreme Court. That takes a lot of time. It also takes a lot of money. So these groups are spending millions and millions of dollars trying to support the community that's going through this process.
Well, it looks like it's just getting harder and harder in every step.
Yeah, essentially. More and more people are hiring us. That's for the immigration lawyer. I was interviewed by the New York Times during last administration, and I said it's almost like it's being an eye doctor. and you're getting a lot of business. Like, oh, my business is good, but the reason I'm getting business is because there's a crazy person poking people's eyes out. And so I preferred
Mhm.
have this business. I prefer people were not terrified and could just live their lives, and even they don't need to knock on my door or my business door. But if it is what it is, and we're here to support people that are going through this process.
Right, right. Well, now let's take up this next one. How might the current proposals, for limiting family reunification impact U.S. citizens seeking to sponsor their relatives?
For sure. So U.S. citizens could do several kind of relative cases. As I mentioned, the parents, spouse, and minor children. The administration has been talking for years of people that are supporting Trump to get rid of the option to have parents to be able to be part of the case. That requires, and everything I'm about to talk right now requires Congress to act and change everything. But yes, stopping parents of U.S. citizens from coming, brothers and sisters of U.S. citizens from coming. That's the F4 preference category. There's a backlog for that. It takes 15 to 20 years to get a green card, maybe longer for that category. But and adult children of U.S. citizens coming. So they'll say, okay, a citizen can bring their spouse and minor children, but they don't need to bring their parents. They don't need to bring brothers, sisters, or their adult children. Adult children can figure out a way on their own. That's what their goals are. And that would be something that would be negotiating in any immigration reform. That would be like the law that the Congress would change, the official law. But changing that kind of stuff is so difficult. But there's negotiations that could possible. Every day as I get older, all these things I never thought were possible are becoming possible. So I can't put it. We have AI talking to me on the computer. It sounds like a human being. We have all sorts of wars going on with technology. That's crazy. So at this point in life, I just say, this world, every day I wake up, there's something new, and I can't put anything past anything. So that's all these are possibilities, really.
Yes. Yes, and I guess we have Mangu back with the correct guess. You do look like a Ranbir Kapoor, actually.
It might
I
be
think
Armin
this is the
Kapoor.
yes, yes, you got it right. Our team was like, you also look like Akshay Khanna, but I guess Ranbir Kapoor is the right one.
Thank you.
Well, yes. Getting back, in a scenario where family visa caps are reduced, how would it affect individuals currently in the queue waiting for a family visa?
So, it's not clear how that's actually going to happen because these people already paid money for this and it was a law. So, for them to change it, it'll be kind of like there'll definitely be lawsuits against it, which would stall things. One option they would say is the people who are already in queue would get certain additional benefits in the new system. So, if they change it, they'll say if they create a point system like in Canada, where like if you're a relative and you have education, you speak English, you get more points and it's faster. They may give you benefits that way. Or they may say, like, whoever's already in the system, you'll go in the old system. But then from today on, it's the new system where it doesn't work or something like that. And they'll just finish off what's going to happen. That's probably the more practical way of doing it. But it's going to be a problem. People are going to be suing and it's going to be caught up in court and litigation. And so a lot of these lawyers who go to court, I don't go to court and do lawsuits myself, but those who are going to have a busy 4 years just going to court every day fighting this stuff out.
Right, right. And what do you have to say about, outdated rules or laws? Do you think some of these laws may be changing soon?
Some of them, if they want to, it's so hard. I mean, right now the Republicans control all the aspects of government, but even then, it's when it comes to immigration, it's not always clear cut black and white. So we might have a Republican who's for certain immigration and another one who's against it. You never really
Mhm.
know. And one main problem is the way immigration regulations are written. Language is so technical that you have to be an immigration expert to write it the proper way. And the problem is, most of the time, inevitably, these laws get written by people who don't practice immigration law and don't know all the aspects of it. So even when, like, we've had situations where someone's anti-immigration, they wrote the regulation, the law, made it the law, and then they didn't
Mhm.
realize how they wrote it. Actually, did the opposite. It created more immigration because the language has to be so technical. And you have to be so aware of it, and they just mess up. So changing anything with regards to how the laws are and this and that, it's just so hard. First of all, getting the political will and the people together to approve it, even if it's approved, we never know how it's going to actually be until it starts coming out because the way
Mhm.
these things are worded and the technical legal language has certain meanings that there are certain different ways. And there's errors in them constantly. You think they would have teams of lawyers to analyze this and talk, but there isn't. And they just make things up as they go along. And that's again, as I get older, I had a professor in law school who used to say, when you're a kid, you think there's this big dad in the world that's going to take care of things and is going to fix things. And you get older, you're like, no, it's just a bunch of kids running around. They have suits on and they make money. And you think they're very sophisticated because they have PhDs, but it's just a bunch of kids running around making things up. And that's the way the world's running. and it's pretty much always been run. So there's going to be a lot of unknowns. So whatever rules change, we won't even know what the rule is until like 6 months, a year go into it and realize, oh, it doesn't play out the way they thought it would, or the rule they made, it goes against another rule, so it can't even be valid in the first place. And
Mhm.
there's another aspect that a couple of years ago, the Supreme Court, let's put it this way, in the 1980s, there was this court case that was unrelated to immigration, but the Supreme Court of the United States said that if a American agency, so America passes laws based on the Congress, like the Parliament in many countries, and they have the final law. But because essentially people in Congress who pass laws are lazy and they just don't want to do much work, they'll say, we made a law that says help brothers and sisters of immigrants. And then they'll say,
Mhm.
let the agencies, these people that the president picks in the bureaucracy, let them figure out how it actually works. And the Supreme Court said, yeah, that's fine. Just let other people who are not elected make the laws and decide what it is. Congress just kind of gets paid and just speeches, but they don't do anything really. It's just corruption, essentially. So they let this happen for 30 years and then 40 years now. And Supreme Court finally, 2 years ago, made a decision to undo this, where the agencies can't just make up the law. If it's a law, the Congress has to vote on it, and then it becomes law. They can't vote on some general statement and then say somebody else who's not elected make a decision. And this affects immigration hardcore way, because most of immigration law is agencies. They just kind of say, well, we're the agency, we say this is the law. And they wouldn't let us challenge it because they would say, oh, the agency made this rule. And based on that court decision in the 1980s, Chevron deference is what they call it. We're going to defer to what the agencies say and let them be the Congress that you're making the laws. They finally, Supreme Court say, you know what, that's not right because they're not Congress. They're not supposed to be making laws. They're supposed to be carrying out the laws. But as this system has developed the last 40 years, they're making up the laws too, which is unconstitutional. It's not, we're voted, a democracy allegedly, so we got to vote for people who do it and not have these agencies make things up. And so that's going to have a massive change in the entire system of America, frankly. This is what Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy of the DOGE, the Department of Government Accountability Office, or whatever they named it, are going to be using a lot, because they'll say pretty much all of America is being run on agency actions, not the law itself. So that means they could undo everything, essentially. And this could have major effects in the immigration system. Like, it's going to affect environmental laws. It's going to affect all these kind of stuff. And immigration, it's been kind of a unique point that a lot of immigration lawyers are frustrated because the agencies, USCIS, and they just mix up stuff. And you're like, wait, that's not the law. And they fight us on it. But we're going to see what happens. It's Wild West. Anything's possible in the next 4 years with all these changes.
Absolutely. And friends, I'm sure you are also, you probably need professional help with regard to your immigration case. And why not contact attorney John Khosravi himself? You can even call him up on his number, 818-934-1561. Otherwise, you can email him. His email address is info@jqqlaw.com. And you can go visit www.jqqlaw.com to get to know more about him and his firm. Well, thank you so much, John. So far, so good. We also have Willie Haggins on Facebook. We are going to address your. Okay, let's take it up. So, John, how may this impact someone already in the U.S. with active status who may be getting married soon and planning to file I-130 and I-485 to adjust status?
Well, thanks for the question. This is the main type of case our office works on. I love helping people in this situation. One thing that'll happen right now is you have to do a medical checkup before you file the case. It's an update they just did last Monday. And you still have to get a COVID booster shot. We're realizing now they keep updating the medicals without even telling us. But I just found out this week that you have to keep getting COVID shots, vaccines. But it depends on if your spouse is a U.S. citizen or green card holder. That's going to affect the filing and how that works out. So, Willie, if you can, let me know if the person you're marrying is a U.S. citizen or green card holder. But what you could expect under the Trump administration is to finish off what he tried to do last time, which is a portion where they want to make sure the person coming here is not going to become a public charge. That means the government doesn't have to take care of them. They can support themselves. So they're going to go hardcore into your credit history. They're going to go hardcore into your education. They'll want language exams to show you speak English to the extent that level that they want. They're going to go into your finances, your debts, all this kind of stuff. And most people will be able to still get the green card, but it's going to create tons of work, essentially doubles the work that we do. And it was one of the worst parts of last administration, filling out this, doubling the casework. And, there are people here who have to get credit reports where they have no security numbers, no credit history. So we have to figure out how we could ask credit reporting agencies to even give a credit report to somebody. And that would take so many hours, and it causes more expenses and everything as well. So Wooly replies saying, spouse U.S. citizen. If you're planning on getting married and things are close, just get married now. File it. Contact their office for a consultation. But the number one thing we know was delays I spoke about earlier. Secondly, interviews happening. There have been waiving interviews for the last 4 years. You'll probably have to do an interview. And third, if you don't get the case in time, you're going to have probably more hardcore background checks when it comes to public charge, financial issues, which you'll probably still pass. But it's just going to create so much more paperwork, headache, and delay and be able to get your case in. And the more paperwork there is, the more chances that something's going to be missed, or the government's going to make a mistake, or just just problems come because there's just more to deal with. And I had a consultation the other week with somebody who got their green card like in 1990, 40, 30 years ago. I'm getting old, and these years things seem so far away. And we did what's called the Freedom of Information Act request, a FOIA request. We asked the government for a copy of the person's file. They wanted to get citizenship, and I'm like, let me get a copy of your whole immigration file to see what happened in the past if you filed your paperwork correctly. And we got it back in the just one application from I-485 adjustment of status that's for applying for a green card. Back then was 4 pages. Right now it's over 20 pages, and it's probably going to be 25 pages next year. So it's just it had like 10 questions about your background. Right now we have 90 questions about your background on the form. It's just they keep adding. Maybe it's 105 or something like that now. So it's just the more you delay, the more questions they're going to ask, which leads more errors happening and more things that it just makes it difficult. Just makes it difficult. So when you have a good case, if you have no criminal history, your finances are good, your relationship is real, you want to just get it in sooner rather than later, because in these kind of cases, waiting longer is just going to create more problems for yourself.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you so much for addressing that to John. And folks out there, it's really important to stay updated because there are updates every now and then, just like John mentioned about about medical reports, right? I mean, updated.
Yeah, out there, yeah, because when you get a green card, you have to file, you have to do a medical checkup to make sure you don't have tuberculosis, gonorrhea, or syphilis, and make sure you don't have any mental health disorders, you don't have any drug abuse issues, and you have to get a list of vaccines. And these vaccines, like especially with COVID, you think that if you got the initial one, you're fine, but now they're saying no, you have to still get an updated booster shot. Still in 2004, coming in 2005, where really the whole situation is not on anyone's radar. It's hard to tell a couple, yeah, you have to get these vaccines. Who knows who's making them or what's in them? What in the world's going on with these things? Essentially, we don't need it. If it was the pandemic, still okay, I'd be scared. Okay, let's do it. But at this point, forcing people to get this, and one of my clients said the doctor's charging $200 extra for it. And it's like, well, $20, $200. We have to work to make this money just to get some vaccine that doesn't make a difference. So it's just annoying, and it brings the costs up. And people, the economy is all over the place. If you're making money in foreign currency, $200 is a lot of money. Even in the U.S., a lot of money, but let alone if you got to translate the money and bring it from overseas. It's just, and this is during the Biden administration. This isn't even a Trump thing. This is a Biden administration thing. So it just, it's sad, and just it's sad to have to tell people this stuff, that they're just being annoying about it. That they're not being easygoing. It's very annoying, obnoxious. The best way to put it at least.
Yes, so much to do just to get your permission for
Yeah.
the visa, or the green card for that. Yes. Let's go on, John. Now, my next question to you is: if the new administration pushes for stricter public charge rules, how might that complicate the process for families applying for visas or green cards?
Yeah, that's going to be a big problem because a lot of people, not making enough money. And right now, the standards for the income aren't too high. For example, if you're a person who's married, no kids, no dependents, or something like that, to bring the spouse, I think it's like 27,000 ish you have to make. Some people make much more than that, but some people barely make that amount of money, so it's hard. But the other end of the public charges, what I spoke about earlier, is not only will they look at the U.S. citizen's income or the green card holder's income, they're going to look at the ability of the foreign national to make money in the United States. And sometimes you might have somebody who's 18, just out of high school, who got married. They don't have any education history. Their language skills might not be that good. They don't have any particular skills or certificates. And how strict they're going to be. Because last time Trump came and they made these rules more strict, they said we want to see all this, but they never create a standard. So it's like, what is the line? How can I tell my clients you're good or not good? They're saying, we're going to ask for this, then feel it out. And I'm like, what kind of laws is
Mhm.
this? It's feelings. It's like one person may get approved with nothing, and one person has everything get denied. And so that's going to lead to lawsuits because of the inconsistency of how they'll deal with that, which creates another problem. I talk about the agencies have discretion too, even despite that Supreme Court rule that I said. The immigration department has discretion to make decisions with who they think is good to come to the U.S. is not. At the end of the day, they have a background. They essentially they can do whatever they want. So usually they're not as strict and they're cool with it and everything. But especially if you're dealing with the U.S. Embassy, those people have all the power in the world. If you're doing your case in the U.S. with USCIS adjustment of status, getting a green card, even a work visa, because you're here, you have extra laws and lawsuits you could do. But if the person at the embassy says something based on the fact that 100, 200 years ago, every country had embassies overseas, but there's no communication ability because everything was far away. So they put the rule back then where they say if you go to the embassy or a consulate and officer there is making a decision, just let them do what they want to do because we don't have the ability to like check what they're doing. So we give them all the power, just make the decision that you want to do. Fast forward 150, 200 years later, they still have this policy called consular non-reviewability, and Supreme Court said it's okay. So they said, if consulates make a decision, we're not going to review what they're saying. So even if they make mistakes, which they do pretty frequently about the law, about the person, they'll say, well, consular non-reviewability, we'll let them do what they want to do. So it's a big, major disaster if you're going through consular processing and you're outside the United States because you never know until you get the green card in your hand. You don't know what in the world's going to go on with it. Whereas in the U.S., if you're doing it here inside the U.S., if they make these major mistakes, we could sue, we could complain, we could show up at the office and say something, a worst case scenario. But that's going to be a big issue about how they're going to handle that.
All right. Thank you so much, John, for taking that up, for addressing this issue as well. And well, we have Willie saying thank you for addressing his replying to Willie
You're
Haggins
welcome.
himself. And we also have ZQ with a question. So, Mr. Khosravi, is it going to get better under the Trump administration by removing these unnecessary tests and vaccines even after one is vaccinated?
I highly doubt that. We have RFK, that was the nephew of President Kennedy, who was assassinated, and son of the former Attorney General, was assassinated as well. And he's famous for being somewhat skeptical of a lot of the vaccines, and you think that would come on here. But I don't know. The vaccine situation is based on the CDC mandates and things that the Center for Disease Control in the U.S. and the health agencies, which he's going to oversee if he's if RFK Jr. is going to be in that position. I don't know if they're going to be getting into the immigration aspect too much. Maybe actually, maybe depends on what RFK Jr. is going to do. He's going to actually be the person inevitably in charge of hiring who's the people who are going to make the decision are, and so potentially they'll say, immigrants maybe don't need to get boosters at this point. We shouldn't make that requirement. That's really depends if he gets elected and if he wants to use his time to focus on the immigrants as opposed to other communities. But that's maybe a bright spot in there to kind of ease up on all these vaccines. There's like 50, what is it, like 10 or 12 vaccines you got to get. A lot of times people have the vaccines
Mandates, right?
already. Sometimes the doctors say don't need it, but there's a lot.
Yes, that's a lot. Just to immigrate to the US, right?
Yeah, and my client the other day, he's like, I got two on his shot, two on this elbow, and they're all swollen. He's like, we have to get the booster, but I can't really take it. My hands hurt, my arms hurt too much. So I'm like, okay, wait till Monday to see if you feel better. If you get the booster, if not, we'll figure something out to do it later somehow.
Whoa, you can only imagine. $200 for a booster shot, that bites. Ouch. And imagine how many? 13.
Yeah, big time.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, John, for taking that up for ZQ. And ZQ, thank you for your questions. Let's move on now to our next. So, how could a potential Trump 2.0 policy shift affect applicants who are facing delays in consular processing for family based visas abroad?
Yeah, it's gonna make it worse. One thing that happens is when a lot of times people are facing delays in getting an interview, even though they should be getting an interview, or after they had an interview, the government just doesn't make a decision. 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years go by, they don't make a decision. What has become mainstream now is to sue the government for the delay once this is happening too much. And probably more than half the time, the government, once they get a lawsuit, they don't feel like dealing with this, so they just give in and issue the visa or do the interview. But we're seeing more and more judges, especially judges in Washington, D.C., denying these cases, saying the embassy, that's up to them. They want to do what they want to do. And potentially the Trump administration's lawyers will fight this more and say, well, these delays are necessary. and it is what it is. We're going to do it. So we're going to have to see, but potentially they might fight the lawyers who are suing the government delays much harder. And when they fight them, increases the cost because they got to go to court, this and that. A lot of times right now, the government just gives up, it gives in, and just says, okay, we'll schedule the interview or give the visa. So the lawsuit is just the first step of the lawsuit. But if they want to go and litigate it, fight it out, that's just going to hit fees. So it comes like a very expensive filing fee for families. So it really hits disproportionately people who are lower income, and those with a lot of money could pay for it, but they're out $5, $10, $20,000 on litigation, and it's not clear which way it's going to go. It's a lot of money just to be able to get an interview or get a visa issue that's going to be issued anyways.
Right, right. Thank you so much, John, for the detailed explanation. I think we should address some of our questions from our audience. Let's take up Ajay's question. I've been hearing a lot about potential changes to family visa policies under the next administration. In your opinion, what do you think will be the most significant impact on individuals trying to bring family members into the US? I think we've been talking a lot about this, but yes, a few more
Yeah,
points.
yeah, the delays that'd be one. One thing I forgot to mention are the potential travel bans because we have an international audience here. Last time around, now this is kind of controversial, and then a lot of my colleagues don't agree with me. But Trump instituted what's commonly known as a Muslim ban because
Yes.
there's a lot of people from Muslim majority countries. But in practice, that list of countries who were part of the so-called Muslim ban were created under the Obama administration for a different situation. If someone had visited this list of 7 or so countries, they wouldn't be able to use what's called the visa waiver program. So if you're German, you could just come visit the United States with what's called a visa waiver for 90 days. But if you visited Iran or Iraq or something like that, or Syria, you have to apply for a full tourist visa. So they could ask you why you went to these countries and check you out first. And so that list was created during Obama administration. President Trump just made that list part of the travel ban. But when you look at it, the Muslim majority countries in the world, whether it's Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, these are the countries that are associated with the 9/11 terror attacks, Pakistan, Indonesia, these are the majority Muslim countries. They were not on the list. It was primarily a list of Iran and its I guess, colleagues, and essentially in the Cold War that we have between the U.S. and its allies, and Iran and its allies. And you could probably throw Russia in on that too now. So it is really more of a strategic defense maneuver that doesn't really, to my opinion, it wasn't based on Muslim. I mean, Islam. A lot of my colleagues don't agree, and they sued saying it's discrimination. But I think it was a strategic thing against certain countries that potentially are rivals to the United States. But that's going to probably be instituted very quickly, and they have full right to do that. The courts have said that, and they could add people. So on the one thing that is, President Trump first created a travel ban on certain countries like Iran, and then he increased it and added countries like Nigeria, for example, which has a lot of Muslim people as well. And the requirement, one of the main requirements, is that these countries share their information that they have on people with the United States databases. So essentially, you open up the books and make yourself a vassal of the United States. Say, here's my books, and it are people. So it is an issue of sovereignty and stuff. But putting that political science stuff aside, Nigeria opened his books and they got back on the list. Now, if you are going to go through visa processing in Nigeria, Kenya, you might be experiencing 3-4 years of wait time just to get an interview. Same with Pakistan or Iran too. A little bit less than those. Those are terrible in Nigeria and Kenya and a lot of parts of Africa. But the delays are out of control, and they're just probably going to get worse and out of control, like years. And just to get an MC interview, once everything is almost at the end of the line, you're almost at the finish line. So bans and delays, that's what's going to be happening for all cases, really.
Right, right. Thank you for addressing that. Yes, that was another important thing to keep in mind, travel ban from various countries, Muslim countries especially. So, folks out there, you can also join us on call. You can call us on this number 425-436-6335, and dial in this access code 988-888, and just say hello. We'll be able to hear you. I mean, you can just join this discussion. Thank you so much, John. Now, moving on, let's take up Sachin's question. With the possibility of policy changes under Trump 2.0, how likely is it that my family's immigration process could be delayed or complicated? Are there any steps we can take to prepare for this?
Well, I got to see what particular kind of cases that you have, what kind of family cases it, what are the relationships, how many family members, their ages. One thing that's going to pop up with these delays, which is a problem potentially, is people who have kids that are nearing the age of 21. So for a lot of cases, if you're getting a green card and you have a child that's under 21, they could get a green card with you as part of the case. Depends on what kind of case you have, but most of them. But the kid starts going over the age of 21, they could fall out of that case. Now, there's regulations that help potentially, a couple of years, 22, 23, 24, you're a little bit older, you still stay in the case. But if certain delays happen or the government messes up the systems, makes it hard to function, to find out how to do, especially if you don't have an immigration lawyer, finding out how to lock in the kid's age in different ways is very complicated. I've done videos on YouTube explaining it, but it's very complicated. And for most people, they can't figure it out. So what happens is you got to spend a bunch of money hiring a lawyer, essentially, and hire a good lawyer that knows what they're doing and is going to pay attention to you, as opposed to get some money and disappears. That's a major problem too. Putting aside the Trump administration, finding good help when it comes to doctors, lawyers, plumbers, whatever it is in life. More and more, I'm seeing it's hard. It's hard because people are too busy with their own lives and they don't care about their work or the people they're working with. They'll get the money and run. So finding good help to guide you through it, and the cost of it is going to be a major problem. If there is even something that could be helpful, that could help this kind of stuff. So doing your own research, studying, and be able to judge. If you talk with a lawyer, you really always should. It's hard, it's annoying, and it's potentially costly. Talk with 5 different lawyers. What you'll see is if you talk with 4 immigration lawyers, you're going to get 5 different answers. You're like, and half the answers will be the opposite of what the other lawyer said. Now, how is that possible? It's a mess, but it's possible. So you got to be able to talk with those people, have discernment to see are they making sense or not. But before any of that, go and study, watch these videos, come to these Q&As, ask your questions. So when you go to the actual lawyer to talk with them, you have good questions to ask. You don't waste your time on simple answers or something like that. And you can tell if this person knows what they're talking about, if they're being honest or not. You got to do your homework to protect yourself. Even if you hire a lawyer, you're paying all the money you think you just hand it off to them. Nothing in life. You got to keep your hands into it. You can't rely on other people. This is such an important thing in your life. You can't just take one person's. You got to get a different opinion, study for yourself, and be ready to fight it out and be prepared.
Absolutely, 100% agreed. So do your research, friends, and absolutely get help from an expert and an immigration lawyer, that is, and do your research properly. And yes, you can also contact attorney John Khosravi himself. You can call him on his number and even email him. And his number is
So it's 818-934-1561. Now, it'll be an answering service. You give your info. Probably the simplest way for you to do it is just go to our website, jqqlaw.com/contact. Put your name in there. Briefly describe, your situation, because we don't do every case. We don't do asylum, for example. If you tell me you're doing an asylum case, I'll say, no, I just can't help you. But if it's something we do, I'll reply back with information on schedule consultation. We do have consultation fees, and we decrease it for certain cases to make it easier on people. So we always want to know what is the case, so you see if we give a lower fee if possible, and we'll respond to you within 24 hours and get you on the way of what you need to do.
yes, and please don't forget to let him know that you are joining him from Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. Just to
Yeah, I would love
know.
it.
Yes, for sure. And Sachin, if you have more details about yourself and your family, it would be great so that maybe John can give you better answers as well. Thank you, John, for addressing that.
Yeah,
We have more questions. Let's take up a few from our Facebook groups, if you don't mind.
sure.
But before we move on, I think we can address one more. So, what changes, if any, could be expected for U.S. citizens sponsoring parents or adult children for green cards in the event of stricter family visa policies, John?
Yeah, so the income requirement for the U.S. citizens to have more ability to show, because that's a flexible one I won't always push against. Back in like 1880, there were a lot of Chinese people coming to the United States. The numbers were less than from Europe, but there was a lot of discrimination happening against the Chinese people coming here. So they started the first public charge rules that say if you're coming in and we don't know if you're going to be able to afford to live here or what's going on, we're not going to let you come in. And the law is in the statute, the Immigration and Nationality Act. It's very vague and open-ended about what they could do about that issue. Currently, what you have to do is just show you make a bare minimum amount of income, and that's enough, and it's really easy to get through. There are issues if you've been in the United States and you get long-term institutional care. For example, you didn't have status, but you're getting health care long-term. You have a disability that requires, like nonstop medical attention. They won't give you a green card because it's going to be too expensive. But most people are not in that situation. But that regulation is very vague, so they could up the ante and make it more difficult if they want to. And so they're probably going to do that to show that the U.S. citizen makes more money, and also the foreign person can support themselves here. It's not going to be a public charge. That's definitely something that they could easily, just turn the knob on and switch it off. And that's something that we can see happening for people in that situation. It's still a lot of people could get it past it, but the paperwork becomes tremendous after that point. And for people doing the case on their own, that's when a lot of problems happen because they can mess up. They don't understand the forms. It's badly written. The rules are badly written. And so the thing is, if they change these rules, no one even has experience on it. So even the lawyers are doing it for the first time. And the government's doing it the first time. So they'll make up a new form for this stuff. We'll send it in. And because the government officers, it's the first time they're seeing it, they'll make mistakes. They'll read it differently than we read it. And there'll be lawsuits. So it becomes a mess. Like it's like a complete unknown of what's going to happen. It's going to be difficult. That's the easiest way to say it, but the simplest way to say it, it's going to be difficult. So you got to be prepared. Make more money, get more education. That's going to help. But inevitably, just talk with experienced people and just be mentally prepared for what's that the thing's going to go difficult, and that kind of sets a tone so you don't get your hopes up, you get too excited thinking you're having fast. And be careful for people that give false promises. There's a lot of people that lawyers that just tell you, yeah, we'll get your case in a week, we'll get it approved in a week. They'll tell you like things are too good to be true. You got to be skeptical. There's a lot of people act like lawyers online or on WhatsApp groups to say, hey, pay me extra 2,000, I'll have somebody, I'll hook it up. Don't trust these people. Talk to different people, get different opinions. I was doing a consultation yesterday, and the person, it was a marriage green card case, and I was a third lawyer they spoke with, and they're saying everything I said was the exact opposite of what the other two lawyers said. Well, I'm like, well, here's my proof. My Instagram page, here are my approval notices I put there that show the timelines we have. And I cited the statute. This is what the law says. So, I put in the email I sent to them. Like, go and tell those lawyers and get a different opinion. If you think I'm wrong, this is what the statute says. This is what the regulations say. This is my approval notice is. I block out the people's names in the case numbers, but I have the proof out that what was happening. So if some people are saying differently, I don't know. Maybe the government's crazy. They do opposite things at the same time. So maybe they had different experiences. But from my experience and what the law says, this is how it is. So you got to, talk to different people and get, get the real proof and evidence and feel comfortable with who you're going to be working with.
So, John, would you suggest, waiting for a couple of months maybe for these changes to get settled and for folks, dealing with these kinds of changes, get familiar with the changes? Would you
No,
suggest
if you
them
got a
waiting?
good case, do it as soon as possible before they have the chance to make these changes. A lot of times when the government makes these changes, they have to announce it and give at least 60 to 90 days for people to like have time to adjust to it. And so if you have a case, get it as soon as possible. We're inundated with work this month, December, because everyone wants to get their case in before January and when President Trump comes in. So we're slammed, and we're probably not going to take a break for the end of the year because we're just going to be filing stuff before that happens, because the day he comes to the office, there'll be different bans, there'll be different issues, there'll be this and that happening. People are going to quit in the government, so it's going to slow down. There's all sorts of problems that are going to happen. So if you have a good case that's solid, sooner you get, don't put it off. We have people who have been married for 20 years, could get a green card. They're living in the U.S. without permission, without status, but they could fix it, but they're just putting it off. Just now calling me and saying, oh, Trump's coming back, I want to fix it now. I'm like, well, you've been doing it for 20 years. You could have got it 20 years ago. You started now. But there's a lot of people like this. They got to get off the chair and in the car and or get up the phone to figure this out. Just to live in peace, not have to deal with this stuff, live above board. So a lot of it now starts to happen. People a lot of times have problems they're not even aware of. They made mistakes in the history that they didn't even know was a problem that an immigration lawyer would be able to understand. So talk with a couple of qualified people. You get a feeling for who you trust and who seems most competent.
Right, right. Thank you, John, for taking that up and for the
You're
detailed
welcome.
explanation.
You got it.
Let's go now with our Facebook question. So this is from Kashaf. Willing to relocate from current country to USA family-based immigration program for advanced degree and exceptional abilities. Okay.
So this is the
I
kind of thing you
think
gotta be careful of. When people say this kind of stuff, this is exactly the kind of thing you see online. And they post this and people, fall prey for it. This person, we don't know who they are. They're gonna they're making up a case probably. They're saying we do the forms and stuff like that. Okay, like did you ask?
mhm,
This is an immigration lawyer, a lawyer in general in the United States is not allowed to solicit and say, hey, come and I'll like. I mean, I can say we do this work, but you got to be careful how they word it. So if some random person tells you like this, you got to be very careful. So I'm glad you brought it up so people see this is not something
yes,
you should respond. There's,
call for it.
there's a lot of lawyers. They should be very careful of this kind of stuff.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let's go on with Ankita's question now. Hi, I'm single. I'm a single mother and have recently got my permanent residency through family-based immigration. I'm originally from Fiji. I went to USA for 3 months and now I'm back in Fiji and waiting for my daughter's visa. I filed for a I-130 petition for alien relative for my 2-year-old daughter. I just wanted to know approximately how long will it take for her visa to get approved? Thank you.
So that's a big problem there because if you go by the way you just did it, it's going to take 3 to 5 years. It's going to be pretty bad. And you might lose your green card by not living in the United States because you want to be with your child. Now, we'd have to have a consultation because you have to know how you got your family based green card, anyways, because your child should have been part of that case in most instances. So there's a major problem, a major error that happened in your case that your child was not part of it because they could have got a visa some way or another, expedited based on the original case. So the fact that your child was not included in your case seems like 90% there's a major problem, a major error happened in your case. And now if you don't fix it in time, or if it's not fixable, you're stuck. It's taking 3 to 5 years for the F2A preference category on what you're dealing with. And since you're a green card holder, you have to be living in the United States. These absences, although they'll probably be lenient about it, but the more you're absent, it's going to delay getting citizenship in the US. But more importantly, next time you come in, if it's long enough absences, at the border, they might try to take your green card away, and that'll cancel out the daughter's case. So this is 100% the kind of case you want to have a good immigration lawyer talking with, at least a consultation to figure out what happened as your child doesn't have a green card already or is not already in line for a visa, instead of you having to file an I-130, which is the last thing you want to do with the current delays they have. Plus, it adds doubles. I mean, you just added a bunch of costs and expenses that were needed potentially. So, I mean, in the thousands of dollars. So, you definitely should consult with a couple of attorneys to figure out what happened, have a copy of your file and what you did so we can figure out what went wrong there, because that doesn't seem right that you needed to do that.
Right. Thank you so much, John, for taking that up for Ankita. Let's go on to our next one. Control, if you could display. This is from an anonymous participant. Hey, my boyfriend waited until way past the expiration date to try and renew his work authorization in Dhaka. Would applying for asylum be a good move? He came to the States when he was a baby and doesn't know any family from where he's from. Please help.
Well, that's a big problem. DACA was a special program that President Trump, Obama did to help people who came as kids to be able to live here and work here. And you have to renew it. If you didn't, it's a major mess up. You could try reapplying late if it's less than a year. Sometimes they say they may approve it as a discretionary matter. So that may be one thing to do. But if you're dating and you have a serious relationship, potentially looking to getting married, if your boyfriend entered the U.S. lawfully and you're a U.S. citizen, potentially that could solve things. They'll just get a green card. If again, marriage is in the plans, it's a legit marriage. If not, they may need what's called a waiver, a 601A waiver. If they had DACA and they entered without permission and they had DACA, they could have got a special travel permission that would fix a lot of things up called advanced parole. But this kind of scenario, I wish they had a lawyer they talk with, a family lawyer, someone in there that they could tell this stuff to. It could have saved you a lot of headache and saved your life from issues that's going to happen. So then I would just consider consulting, schedule a consultation time, thoroughly talk to an attorney, know exactly what happened, and know all your options. Asylum is a problem because you should be able to file for asylum within a year of entering. They have exceptions where if you file asylum later, but it's a complicated case. There's backlogs. It could take 3 months to get the case decision. It could take 10 years. And it's an expensive, complicated process. You have to have a valid asylum claim. And so I don't even know if there's a valid asylum claim there. And we don't do asylum, so we don't consult on that. But these are exactly the scenarios. Now, immigration lawyers, some have consultation fees. We do. It's pretty expensive. Some don't. So first, contact people, 2 or 3 people who do free consultations, see if they're worth it or what kind of guidance they give. Then save up money and talk with 2 people who do charge. Compare those 5 people. Spend the time on it. It's your life. And your boyfriend's life is your future. It's worth the investment to get down to business and see what's going on to help save yourselves.
Thank you, John, for addressing this one as well. Let's go on to our next one. We have a couple more minutes. Yes, this is from Maheen. We are a
Mhm.
British family currently living in London and want to migrate to US. My husband is IT consultant, works with big firms here, making good money. My husband wants to look for jobs in US now, so we can be close to the family as both of our families reside in the US. Please suggest which visa category is best for us other than H1 as it requires job offer and lottery system, which is not guaranteed. Any other visa category we can apply so that he can get working rights in the USA and start applying for IT jobs there. Yes, any UK based. Okay, this is forget it. Yeah.
Yeah, so in the UK, there are immigration lawyers in the UK, are friends of mine that could potentially help as well. The H-1B problem, yeah, is a lottery. Is a limited number of people who could get those work visas. You have to have an employer. The EB-2 and EB-3 green cards normally require employers as well. There's an exception called the national interest waiver, EB2, which is if your work is in the national interest of the United States and you're very successful, you get a green card based on that. Depends on your background. Now, there is an E2 visa option, as you kind of referenced there, that the listener referenced there. That's an investor visa. If you start a small business in the United States or buy a small business, you come here and run it if you're from certain countries. And UK is one of, if you have a UK passport. So that may be something to look into, especially the spouse of the E2 investor gets a full work permit, can work wherever they want. So maybe one partner, husband or wife, or whatever partner, takes their money, invests, starts a small business, and their spouse gets an unlimited work permit. They can work wherever they want. And as long as that business is operating, making money and growing and everything, you stay in the United States with your family members under 21, your children under 21, and your spouse. So that may be an option, but you got to look into investments, starting a business. It's not a small affair. It's your life savings potentially. You want to make a right choice on that. But that may be an option for a UK citizen to open it up to come over here and take their life to the next level.
Thank you so much, John, for addressing that for Maheen. Now let's go on to our last question from Facebook, if that's fine. This is from an anonymous participant. Control, if you can display it, please.
Okay, so
All right. So I guess we are done then. Thank you so much for that, for addressing all of those Facebook questions and questions from our audience. And I think it's now time to almost wrap up our show, John. So what would you like to say to our folks out there as an end note on this discussion today?
I say thank you for listening. The first step is to get the education, knowledge of what's going on, and just being open to it. Many times people will have the cases destroyed, and then they start calling me, asking up. I'm like, well, if you called me yesterday, I could have done something, but at this point, it's too late. So if you're listening to this, is the first thing is seeking and to have understanding and seeking wisdom, and that's the number one thing in life and outside of immigration you got to do to have a better life. Seek wisdom and understanding, and this is a part of the process, and continue it for your future well-being, especially if you're in this field that you're trying to go on the immigration side. So I really appreciate it that you're watching this, and definitely reach out to, if you want to reach out to us, our contact information, jklaw.com/contact is there. But keep studying. YouTube is wonderful, has all these videos. Now, note that there's a lot of immigration lawyers that I know say wrong stuff on YouTube. Who knows? I may be saying some wrong stuff too. You got to do your homework, talk to different people, and get down to the bottom of it to make the best decision for you and your family.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, John. It was really enlightening, the session. We learned so much. I'm sure all the viewers out there also gained a wealth of knowledge really today joining us here. And thank you so much for doing this, really.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
I'm really looking forward to have you join us again, maybe in the coming week or the coming weeks. And also, we have our show, Daily Immigration Dose, folks out there, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you can join, and maybe even John, if you can join, it would be great. It's a an open discussion. Anyone can join. So anyone, if you're free, please feel free to join. But thank you so much, John. Otherwise, for doing this today, it was really great having you.
I appreciate that. I wish you the best.
Have a great day. Bye bye.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, folks, for joining us today on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter or X. Thank you so much for your questions, and I hope that you enjoyed this discussion. Please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, especially if you resonated. Don't forget to like this content, and of course, don't forget to also contact Attorney John Khosravi and go check him out at www.jqqlaw.com, and you can even call him up on his number 818-934-1561, and his email address is info@jqqlaw.com. Thank you, folks, for joining, and stay tuned on Immigration and Jobs Talk Show, because we are going to be back with more. And yes, 4 p.m., we are going to join you with Daily Immigration Dose. So stay tuned. Bye bye for now.